an opportunity to talk about our rhinos, and I thank Senator for having walked ahead of me to your office to get the opportunity. I support fully what she said. But I want to add, Mr. Speaker, that the committee that may look at this must establish the following facts. Why were rhinos being removed from Lake Nakuru, where there's more vegetation, and Nairobi National Park, where there's more vegetation, to be taken to Savo East, which is Asal? The second point, Mr. Speaker, is wherever these rhinos are, they're an attraction to tourists and therefore part of the economy of the counties where they are domiciled. Was public participation undertaken for the public in Nairobi and in Nakuru to allow their rhinos to be taken elsewhere and therefore lose revenue? But more important, Mr. Speaker, the facts are as follows. These rhinos were created, sedated, created, and moved to Savo East. Upon arrival, Mr. Speaker, they were maintained in the crates and fed for 5 days. I don't know whether that was right. After the 5 days, Mr. Speaker, the rhinos were released into a sanctuary that had not been properly analyzed scientifically to see whether they could survive or not. But more important, Mr. Speaker, boreholes that had been drilled in this sanctuary had their waters taken and tested and found to be 30% more alkaline than is required for any bovine consumption. So, Mr. Speaker, as the rhinos were released to go into the bush, they were going to actually drink poison because the water from the boreholes had 30% alkaline content over and above the required level for animals to consume. Mr. Speaker, when the rhinos died, we've now had a charade, like a theater of the absurd. The minister saying all manner of things, including, but not limited to, lying to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, that the board of KWS is responsible when he knows that the board of KWS expired on 17th of April this year. The rhinos were relocated on 26th of June this year. So which board is he referring to? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the minister then, in a fit of impatience and arrogance, moves quickly to sack employees of KWS. We know under the law, Mr. Speaker,
2 more minutes, Senator Wetangula.
We know under the law, Mr. Speaker, that the minister cannot sack employees of a board. So under what authority was he purporting to dismiss employees of the board? This excessive display of raw authority and power, Mr. Speaker, is what is destroying this country. And when Kenyans got angry with this minister, he says, go to hell. And then he starts thinking that Kenyans have got the brains the size of a pinhead, and swings around and says, I didn't say go to hell, I say go to Hellsgate. Mr. Speaker, what a shame. I'm sure every Kenyan, even the infantile ones, know the difference between go to hell and go to Hell's Gate. Mr. Speaker, in comparable jurisdictions, given that rhinos are endangered species world over, and we are lucky that we have just about 700 of them, this minister should not wait to be sacked, should have reconsidered his position. That's what happens in comparable jurisdictions. That you don't get yourself with your hand on the till and you brush up and say it wasn't me, when everybody can tell, Mr. Speaker. So this committee, Mr. Speaker, must go deep into this. Why is this reckless behavior against a resource that attracts tourists to this country, brings resources and sustains our economy? can be handled in such a callous, reckless manner, and then you get an even more reckless response from a person who is supposed to be responsible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.